What's going on, fight fans? Welcome to These Things Happen in MMA. The goal of this channel is to highlight crazy and spectacular moments that have made MMA what it is today. In this episode, I'm going to talk about Demetrious Johnson, Ben Askren, and how their paths crossed to create a historic moment for the sport. This is the story of the first trade in MMA history.
According to reports, UFC and ONE Championship have arranged a fighter trade.
Demetrious Johnson appears to be headed to ONE, and Ben Askren appears to be headed to the UFC.
Demetrious Johnson just left the UFC and went over to ONE FC. Ben Askren was their champion. He was undefeated over there, and they made a deal.
Ben Askren to be traded to the UFC in exchange for Demetrious Johnson to be traded to ONE Championship.
Breaking news from the world of mixed martial arts. I'm being told from multiple sources that there is a proposed deal on the table between UFC and ONE Championship to do this trade. And yes, I said trade. There has never been a trade before in the history of this sport. That may change very soon.
In the middle of 2018, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson and Funky Ben Askren were at completely different points in their careers. DJ had just lost his belt to Olympic gold medalist Henry Cejudo, snapping his UFC record of 11 consecutive title defenses. Askren, on the other hand, was retired and felt he had nothing left to prove in his current organization. With a perfect record of 18 wins and 1 no contest, Ben spent the last 7 years clearing out the welterweight divisions of both Bellator and ONE Championship.
ONE FC, for people who have no idea what we're talking about, is a gigantic organization in Asia. They are literally the equivalent to the UFC in Asia. And although many people in America are not aware of them, they don't know who they are, they're a huge organization overseas. Absolutely gigantic, and they do a fantastic job. They have real high-level fighters. They're not into this. You know, what we saw with the Conor McGregor, Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, all the trash talking and all the stuff that you're seeing that was becoming more and more prevalent in the UFC, you don't see that at all at ONE FC.
Although Askren hadn't fought in around a year or so, he was still considered to be an elite fighter, and regardless of DJ's loss, he was still looked at as one of the best in the sport. Their need for a new challenge and a change of scenery would ultimately be what brought them together. Now that Demetrious wasn't obligated to defend his title, he felt this was the perfect moment to fulfill his dream of fighting in Asia.
When did you first come up with this idea?
I think the first idea that I wanted to travel to compete in Asia and ONE Championship, it's always been in the back of my mind. Once I lost, I was like, okay, well, it is what it is, and I'm going to move on with my career, and, the UFC can keep on building that flyweight division and do what they want to do. I wasn't a champion. There was nothing, technically holding me down in the UFC. I would have won that fight. I probably would have, defended my belt 4 more times because that's how many fights I had left on my contract. And then after that, I would have, pursue my way to Asia. But
aside from his desire to compete overseas, Johnson had problems with Dana White and the UFC for years on the matters of his pay and how they promoted him. Not only that, but his head coach, Matt Hume, is also the vice president of operations over at ONE Championship. Mighty Mouse had nothing left to prove in the UFC and decided to see if his manager, Malky Kawa, could get him released from his contract. Malky then started talks with UFC executive vice president, Hunter Campbell. They concluded that if ONE Championship would be willing to give up the rights to Ben Askren, then maybe a trade of sorts could be worked out. Malky pitched the idea to ONE, and after some pushback, a deal was agreed upon.
After my last fight, I sat down with Malky and I sat down with Matt, and I was like, you know what? I don't think there's nothing left for me to prove here in North America. I've done it all. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to see if, I love working with Malky. So anything I bring to Malky to the table, he's always like, I can make it happen. And when I asked him, I was like, you think you can get me, released from my contract? He goes, I could release today. And I was like, oh, well, that's very bold of you to say. And that's how the talk started to happen.
We approached Dana, who was not for it at all. He was actually against the idea. And it didn't look good at first. And then I made a pitch to Hunter Campbell, who was really instrumental in getting this thing done with me. Once, me and Hunter got into an agreement on it, and I was able to get ONE FC on it, it was easy after that. When I was talking to Hunter, my pitch to Hunter was a very real one. It was very honest on the whole situation. And I took a risk by doing that because, it's no secret Matt Hume is the VP over there, and he's also DJ's coach. So the idea of trading wasn't necessarily mine. It was the idea of what else could we do to make it happen. And Hunter came back with, well, if you can go get ONE FC to give us Ben, then we will do this. So I went then to ONE FC and said, hey, can we make this happen?
On October 27, 2018, the first ever trade in MMA history was officially announced. This wasn't a trade in the typical sense that most sports fans are used to. Fighters are under contract with their respective promotions, which makes things a little more complicated, and all parties involved would need to agree upon the proposed trade. That meant getting the UFC, ONE Championship, Ben Askren, and Demetrious Johnson all on the same page.
So if we can swing this where you guys release Ben from his contract, he has several fights left, and we release DJ from his contract with the understanding that you are going to go over there and he's going to come over here, that's how it happens. So we use the word trade, quote unquote. It's not your typical, hey, I'm the Phillies and I'm going to send you packing to the Mets. Everyone has to be on board with this, and everyone is on board, including both operations, both organizations, and everyone wants to see this happen.
I think this is a win for everybody involved. This is one of those deals where ONE FC has to be happy, UFC has to be happy. I know I'm happy, Ben's happy, everybody's happy. So
now that the deal was done and everyone involved was happy, other questions would start to emerge as a result of the trade. Does this open the door for more deals like this in the future? Who's going to be Johnson and Askren's first opponent? Now that long-reigning champ Demetrious Johnson is gone, is this the end of the flyweight division? There was even talk of a 165-pound division being made with the loss of the flyweights.
If you lose 125, opportunities there to make 165 if somebody ever wants to. I know Dana White is very resistant against that, but the opportunity would then be there.
165 will certainly be a bigger money-drawing division. That championship, that title, will be a pay-per-view headliner type title, whereas 125 has not really been that type of draw.
What do you think you will accomplish in the UFC?
I think I'm going to be the 165-pound champion by the end of 2019.
There is no 165-pound weight class, Ben.
Or is there? There will be. Bank on it.
As of the recording of this video, no 165-pound division has been created, although there's still a big portion of the MMA community that would like to see the addition of the new weight class. The 125-pound division remained intact with the help of Henry Cejudo and Davison Figueiredo bringing more attention to the flyweights. However, during this transition, a lot of flyweights would be cut from the UFC. Before the trade, Dana White and Ben Askren didn't have the best relationship, and the two would exchange jabs at each other through the media for years. White mostly criticized Askren for his fighting style and level of competition he was facing, while Ben mostly criticized Dana for signing lesser talent and not giving him a shot in the UFC. However, once the deal was finalized, Dana would try to downplay any problems he had with Ben.
You had Ben Askren come backstage tonight. He was in the house. Did you have a chance to speak with him?
Yeah, we just talked when this guy thinks I hate him and all this. If I hated you, why would I do that? I'm the one that did this deal. I'm the one that came up with this deal. This was my idea. Why would I do this if I hated you so bad and didn't want you to be here?
You unblock him on Twitter?
I didn't even know that he was blocked on Twitter, yeah. Yeah, it like wasn't my first priority, you know. I've been doing some shit, you know. I've been busy. But yes, I had my girl that does it unblock him on Twitter.
Both DJ and Askren would have their first fights booked with their new promotions in March of 2019. Askren was up first, facing fan favorite Robbie Lawler at UFC 235. Ben won his UFC debut in controversial fashion after somehow surviving a shot from the ex-champ that would have put most people out. Askren then locked in a bulldog choke that caused referee Herb Dean to stop the contest after it appeared Lawler was unconscious. Immediately after the stoppage, Robbie popped up and challenged Herb's decision, claiming he was okay to continue. However, when all was said and done, the bout would count as a win for Askren. After the contest, more questions would arise about Askren's relationship with the UFC president, as Ben shared he tried to reach out to Dana but was denied.
Can you guys just make up and move on?
Yeah, you know, I've offered to sit down with him multiple times. He seems to have no interest in that. I don't know what his hesitation is. You know, if I'm gonna be one of the top fighters in the division, to sit down and take 30 minutes out of your day to talk to me, that wouldn't be such a big deal in my opinion. He has no interest in talking to me. I honestly, to this day, I don't know what his problem was in 2013. I don't know what his problem is now.
One thing is, I just don't understand. He said you won't talk to him. Why won't you talk to him?
Oh my God, this is crazy.
So he just
it's
said
like Colby Covington thinks I hate him too. I don't know what I do to make people think I hate him. I don't hate these guys at all.
He said he wanted to talk to you for a half an hour and you wouldn't give him 30 minutes of your time.
That dude's nuts. He got punched around a little bit tonight. Did he say it after the fight?
He said that right?
Yeah, he got punched around a little bit tonight. That's crazy. He's never asked me for 30 minutes. Ever.
DJ would have his bout scheduled for later in the month and took part in ONE Championship's Flyweight Grand Prix. This would be the quarterfinals event and saw Mighty Mouse cruise to a submission victory over Yuya Wakamatsu in the second round. Since going on to win their promotional debuts, both fighters would have varying results. DJ would win his next two fights and become the winner of the Flyweight Grand Prix. His latest bout was ONE Championship's debut on American television and aired on the TNT network. He fought flyweight champion Adriano Moraes and suffered the worst loss of his career with a knee that put him out in the second round. Ben's results wouldn't fare any better, and his next fight with Jorge Masvidal would only last 5 seconds before he got knocked out with a flying knee. The knockout went viral, setting a UFC record for fastest KO and propelling Masvidal into stardom. 3 months later, he'd lose again, this time to Damian Maia by submission in the third round. After just 3 UFC fights, Ben retired a second time in November of 2019. Sort of. Askren returned a year and a half later in a boxing match against YouTube personality Jake Paul and resulted in a loss by TKO in the opening round. Although there's been mixed results as pertaining to their fights, all parties involved seem to have no regrets about their decisions. DJ got his wish to fight overseas in a promotion that has a greater emphasis on the smaller weight classes. Askren got to challenge himself and answer the question of how'd he fare in the UFC. One championship added one of the best fighters of all time to the roster, while simultaneously getting rid of one that was disinterested in fighting for them anymore. And the UFC was still able to capitalize off of Askren, regardless if he won or not, by gaining a new star in Jorge Masvidal.
We just had the anniversary, the 1-year anniversary of the Mighty Mouse vs. Ben Askren trade. Any regrets looking back on that a year later?
No regrets whatsoever. That fight was incredible. And Ben brought a lot of hype to the UFC. People were excited about him coming in and fighting and seeing what he could do. The fight with Ben and Masvidal is what built Masvidal into what he is right now and going into this weekend. Without Askren, that doesn't happen.
It took 25 years for history to be made with the first trade in MMA, and in the following 3 years since, there's been no other deal like it. Nevertheless, this historic trade opens the possibilities for other deals like this to be had in the future, and they don't necessarily have to look like this one did.
This is potentially groundbreaking news in MMA. Not because Demetrious is going, and not because Ben is coming. This is one small step away from a co-promote. Now, the UFC has been very against co-promotes. We haven't seen co-promotes in mixed martial arts. I don't suggest for you that we're about to see a co-promote in mixed martial arts, but I will tell you that doing this kind of a deal with Demetrious and Ben, ONE FC to the UFC, is one step away and perhaps has opened the floodgates. And even if you never see a co-promote, you really don't have to do a co-promote if you can just get promoters to trade athletes back and forth. Are any of those things likely to happen? No, maybe not. But they are one hell of a lot more likely to happen today than they were yesterday.
One of the things I love about this young sport is the feeling that anything's possible. We haven't yet reached a point in our sport's history where the UFC is the only promotion representing professional MMA. And who knows, we may never reach that point. Although the UFC is the predominant leader when it comes to mixed martial arts, there's still other great promotions out there with amazing talent. As long as there's still viable competition around, the possibilities of more trades and co-promotes will only increase. This sport is ever growing, and it only feels a matter of time until we see the next perfect storm that results in another historic deal. As always, I posted some related videos down below for those interested in taking a look. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below with the topic you'd like to hear me cover in a future episode. Thanks for watching and supporting my channel.
I never envisioned that a trade would be the case where I ended up in the UFC, right? I mean, it's never happened before. So there's no case in point, oh, well, it happened at this time or that. No, it just literally never happened. This is the one and only time it's happened.
Do you like the fact that you were involved in the only trade ever in MMA history?
Yeah, it's cool, right? And I mean, I also like the fact that I held Demetrious Johnson in high regard. You know, I got traded for one of the all-time greats. So obviously that says a lot about what they think about me.
If you are unsuccessful, if you go into the UFC and you lose and you never win a UFC fight, what will that mean? What will it prove?
I don't think it proves anything. I'm one of the best in the world, period. I've won 18 fights. I haven't been beaten 9 years of fighting. I didn't get beat. If you're dreaming when you're a little kid about what you're accomplishing when you grow up, I'm far past that, right? I have a great life. I am here because I think I'm the best. I want to go compete against the best, and I want to prove that to myself. And that's really it. And hey, if I can't do it, I already failed in wrestling, right? It's fine. My life's still great. It'll probably give me some lessons to teach kids down the road, and that's it.